Today, on A Word on Westerns, Ed Asner.
Well, you come a long way from Florida.
Doing the same old stuff.
I'm glad you found dry land.
You guys are rolling. All right, so everybody applause.
Welcome to A Word on Westerns, where we talk to the greatest Western creators of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Rob Word.
And I'm RJ Word.
And you're listening to A Word on Westerns, the podcast.
We're here to talk about and with Ed Asner.
This is a man who, when I first met him back in 1977, had been very successful in the comedy Mary Tyler Moore Show. He was just getting ready to start a new show called Lou Grant. He won Emmys for all of these shows.
It's really unusual to see not just a spin-off, but a spin-off with a genre shift.
It certainly is. I mean, not to say that there wasn't humor in Lou Grant, but it was an hour-long journalism show with smart scripts. Gene Reynolds, one of the producers and writers of MASH later, was the main showrunner on Lou Grant, and it was a terrific show. We're going to talk about that in a 1977 interview I did with Ed later in the show you're listening to right now. But first, we're going to have Ed talk about his Westerns, including his bad guy role in El Dorado. Who starred in that? Do you know, young man?
No.
Oh, come on. John Wayne.
Okay.
And Robert Mitchum.
Yeah. Okay. No,
James Caan.
That's in my notes here. I don't want that to go into
come on. No, that's great to have that because of your generation.
I first knew Ed Asner as Santa Claus and Elf.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Fredricksen in Up.
Oh, yes. Well, those are two indelible roles, but I first met him in person in Orlando, Florida.
20 years before I was born.
Yeah, well, that's true. And he was one of those special people who, when I wrote him and said, I'm thinking about coming out to Los Angeles and, making a go of it, he wrote back. And we had correspondence, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but when I got to L.A. and I didn't really know many people, I did meet a few, and I was very lucky, and Ed and one of his co-stars, Jacqueline Scott, Jackie and her husband, Gene Lesser, were such great friends and wonderful people. When I first came into town, they welcomed me, but what Ed did, Lou Grant was already in production, and so he invited me to come to the set, which was Studio City, the old Republic Studios, where they were shooting Mary Tyler Moore and Lou Grant and all those MTM shows.
Is that CBS Redford now?
Yes, it is. And I'll tell you what was great. Ed says, "Come with me, Rob." And we walked out of the soundstage where they were filming Lou Grant, and suddenly we're on the Western Street that had been used on Gunsmoke and Have Gun Will Travel, and it was still standing at that time. It's long gone now.
That's a shame.
Ed says, "Let's walk down here," and he points out and he says, "Here's where Doc Adams' office was," and it was stairs that went nowhere up the side of a building, and he says, "Let's continue." We went to the end of the street, and there's this run-down, fallen-down ranch house-looking house. He says, "This was the Duchess's location for the Red Ryder series."
All I can think about right now is how I wish you had had a Super 8 camera with you.
Or these iPhones that can shoot everything. And I would have just strolled along with Ed talking about those days. But even better, he joined us at the Autry with an audience, and he shared great stories of John Wayne and Robert Mitchum and these icons. And the El Dorado movie that he was in, he's the bad guy. Well, I'm going to let him tell the story because Nobody could tell a story like Ed Asner, and he was the kindest man. And I'll tell you a little bit more at our break in the middle, but I want to get into this interview with Ed and let him tell people how it was back then.
Yeah, because he'd be cutting you off right now to get his story in.
He'd be getting those laughs from the audience, and he was a strong, dramatic actor, too.
Here he is, Ed Asner.
He's a 20-time Emmy-nominated actor who's won 7, which ties him with Mary Tyler Moore. But wait a minute, Mary Tyler Moore, didn't you do a show with her?
I did all kinds of things with her.
She never did a Western, did she?
Not that I know of. No.
Yeah.
No. It would have bowed her legs, and that would have gotten in the way of her ballet dancing.
What a wonderful show that was. But we're not here to talk about Mary Tyler Moore.
Oh, who are we talking about?
How about where you played the baddest ass guy in a movie with Big John Wayne called El Dorado?
Oh, that one.
Yes.
The remake of Rio Bravo, I guess. Oh, yeah.
I think El Dorado perhaps had more laughs in it than Rio Bravo.
I think it had more talent.
The story of 2 close friends who didn't need any enemies to start a war.
What the hell are you doing here? I'm looking at a tin star with a drunk pinned on it.
Well, it had a couple things that were the same. The writer, Lee Brackett, the director, Howard Hawks. So what was Hawks like?
He was a tiger, but he was a man who believed in justice. My ass got in big trouble because I had a big party at my place with stuntmen and Lufthansa pilots and Robert Mitchum. And then we started playing poker. And we were making all kinds of noise because I just had twins at the time. I had a suite. And when my wife wasn't there, I just had this suite next to Howard Hawks's.
The party suite, is that the one?
That's it. Well, Mr. Hawks's sleep was disturbed. So at dawn the next day with Andy, I can't remember his name, the first assistant, he banged down my door and said, "Ed, everybody's coming out to Old Tucson whether they're on call or not after last night's tragedy." Because his sleep was disturbed. So, okay, Mr. Hawks, fine. He said, "If you don't like it, you can go back to Los Angeles." I said, no. So I started going out to Old Tucson, even though I wasn't working. And I knew I was in the doghouse. That's a euphemism for something else. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And Larry Butterworth was John Wayne's makeup man. He's dead since. He's a wonderful guy. And he said, I always find it's a good way to get out of a scrape if you write a letter. I said, oh, okay. So I began to think about writing a letter. R.G. Armstrong, who had a degree in English, was on the show. He said he'd help me. I said, okay. So we composed a letter. It was a good letter. And I stuck it in the mailbox, apologizing to Mr. Hawks. Well, every night I'd come back from Old Tucson, the letter'd be there. Every night, the letter'd be there. Finally, I turned to the guy behind the desk and I said, does he ever pick up his mail? I said, well, I said, see that he gets that letter. Well, the next night it was gone. I went out to Old Tucson, and I saw Hawks down the back, and I saw him heading towards me, and I said, oh, God. As he got to me, he said, hello, Ed. Thank you for your letter. And I saw that I was out of the doghouse, and I wanted to fall to my knees, but I thought it would be too much with that Western crowd.
The little question unanswered between us. Which one of us is best? That's right.
He produced and directed, which was unusual when he started doing it in the 30s, because mostly the directors were just hired hands in studio. So he and Duke were both used to getting their own ways. What was their relationship like?
It was a good one. It was a good one. He didn't like the cameraman, some stars, first husband, but he didn't like him. And he wanted to trying to get him out of there. Hawks wouldn't let him go.
Why?
I don't know. I never was able to snoop that much.
Well, the older lighting guys took more time, probably,
Yeah.
and that might have had something to do with it.
I certainly had no problem with him.
And John Wayne, how was your relationship with him? He was the biggest star ever,
Well,
and still is.
I was in the first scene of the movie, and Hawks got Duke and me together, and I didn't know anything about Duke, or I didn't know Duke at all. And he began going over the scene, and I would suggest a change of a word here, alter a line there, and Hawks would buy it, and he'd put it down. And Duke didn't change anything. Then Hawks said, "Well, Ed, I think it's going to take some time before they're ready to have the set ready. So you can go back to your trailer," or I said, "Okay." So I was in an outfit where I looked like marrying Sam. I thought I looked like marrying Sam and Lil Abner. And I didn't like it.
Did they want Stubby K for that part?
He could have really done a good job. Stubby was a wonderful marrying Sam type. So I'm wandering around, nervous as hell, my first picture. I mean, this army of grips, hauling brutes and this and that, up to we were shooting on the outside of the ranch house. All this equipment. And man, they got to be ready by now. So I started heading toward the location. And as I'm approaching it, there's Wayne exercising his Appaloosa. He's backing it up, and he's looking right at me. Maybe I'm at the end of the theater here. And he's saying, "Where's that New York actor? Where's that New York actor?" And I knew he meant me, and I'm looking right at him. "You mean me?" And he came I walked on past him to the set, and we began to work.
And that horse, that Appaloosa that he was riding, I don't think, from what I understand, Duke liked that horse. It seemed a little too small, but Hawks owned the horse. And so he wanted it in the film, and so he made Duke ride
It was
it.
a pretty horse.
Yeah.
A pretty horse.
I know that you were a big fan of radio drama because your voice could probably do just about anything William Conrad's voice could do.
Well, he pretty goddamn good.
I remember I was listening to a book on tape, and it sounded like there were 6 or 7 actors doing this book on tape, and it was you. Amazing.
Really?
Just terrific voice. I know you're doing a lot of animation. Is that like radio drama, or do you record alone?
It depends. It depends on the director. I don't know. I've done both. But it's amazing how they never call me. I think
They were calling, he has like 800 credits.
I'm $1 too much. Yeah.
You work a lot and you do fabulous work. Let's talk about some of your earlier Westerns. I know Gunsmoke, you had a wonderful episode, and there are many, many great episodes on Gunsmoke, but The Whispering Tree with John Saxon, Jackie Scott, even Morgan Woodward has a bit in that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that was the one or not, but there was I ride, but I don't ride well. My ass is too big. I need to wear it down a little. So on this one show, I don't know if it was The Whispering Tree or what. It probably wasn't. I thought it was Virginian. They'd given me a good plug. But for this one shot, they needed my plug, and they put in a steed, and it looked just like him. And I came out from wherever what I was doing and got on my steed, and I couldn't get my right foot into the stirrup. He took off before I could get it in, and he's heading down at 100 miles an hour. Fortunately, the camera was on the right turn, and he knew enough to make the right turn. And as he made the right turn, he made it so that he went under a branch. Yeah. And knocked my ass into the dirt. So Mark Rydell was directing, and I felt so embarrassed and ashamed. And Mark said, "That's okay, Ed. A lot of guys wouldn't get back on the horse after that," which I did. And we did the scene.
And he really, I think, liked to show off in those early ones, to show people what he could do, because that was loaded with action, including your stunt.
I don't know if it ever got on film, though. I'd love to buy it back. But that was exciting.
Yes, it was. The Gunsmoke episodes hold up so well for 20 years, and Big Jim Arness couldn't have been a better choice, and John Wayne picked him for the part.
Wayne has good taste, let's put it that way. Jim Arness was a lovely guy, the loveliest guy in the world. I don't know what he's like between close friends.
I think he was the same. He had a wonderful sense of humor. As you know from being on set with him, he loved to laugh.
He didn't give me many laughs.
Well, you were playing bad guys back then. Oh, he wanted you to stay in character.
Well, the funniest thing in the world was on that particular, was it that one?
Hung high.
Hung high. I dressed that way.
Well, as I get older, I'm hanging low, but, that's the hung high, where you have a tussle with Arness. He throws you in jail.
Yeah.
And then later on, you find him and think he's the murderer, and so you take him back.
I think he's the murderer?
Yes.
No wonder I was drunk in the film. I think I was drunk all the way through. But he put me in jail. The most ridiculous thing in the world. Finally, the weekend is over, and he lets me out of jail. I come out, and I'm really bugged that he did that to me. And I turn around, I take a swing at him. And to me, it's one of the most ridiculous moments in Hollywood history that I would stand there at 5'9" at that time and take a swing at Jim Arness. It's like countering a bear.
Maybe you were still drunk, though, when you were
it
was like hitting a sequoia.
I was certainly blotto.
Wow.
He was huge, but what a sweet guy.
Speaking of huge, and, Duke was tall, too, but he's standing next to Arness. He looked squatty. That in your film, El Dorado, James Caan wore like 3 or 4 inch lifts, and it gives him that funny walk.
Which he kept. He likes knocking his knees together.
Well, he was trying for that cowboy walk, and it's so hard to find those.
I don't try for those. Do you ever show Shepherd of the Hills?
I have seen it with Betty Field. I know you did a Route 66 with Betty Field.
Yeah.
See, I remember all these things.
Prodigious man. It's a true encyclopedia. Yeah.
That was Henry Hathaway, John Wayne, another mentor, Harry Carey, Sr., and Betty Field. Wasn't she in that?
I don't recall. I never saw it, but it gave him his start, right?
No, he got his start really from being a prop guy for John Ford in silent films, but then Raoul Walsh spotted him, changed his name from Marion to John Wayne, and put him in The Big Trail, which, because of the recession, and they had shot it in ultra wide screen in 1930, none of the theaters could spend the money for those projectors and the lens to project it. And so the movie lost a lot of money, and then he was making serials at Mascot Pictures, and then made for 10 years B-Westerns mostly that were good, taught him how to act. He and Yakima Canutt worked together in most of those Lone Star films and devised the fighting style. So if Yak had been with you on that Gunsmoke episode, maybe you could have gotten Jim Arness knocked out.
Where was
Yes.
It's Jackie.
Jackie, look, here's Jackie Scott down here.
You're late.
It's my son.
Yeah. Why don't you get her ass up here?
Jackie, come on up here. How are you, sweetheart?
When you talk about ashamed,
A what?
ashamed of myself.
Why?
And I've been sitting, I said, I can't interrupt those guys. My God, they're big stars.
This broad, she was never a broad. She was the excitation of every man I knew. They all wanted her so badly and strived for her and fell in love with her. She was truly the belle of the ball in those days.
Boy, I'm glad I yelled.
You still got a great smile.
Listen, I gotta tell what I bet you don't remember.
Oh, God.
Now that you're talking about that kind of thing.
What kind of thing?
No, I'm only kidding.
Ah.
I saw the first Mary Tyler Moore show.
Oh, yeah?
And we'd been pals. We'd known one another, our families, a little bit long before that. And when I saw that show, I was laughing so hard, I didn't know I was going to talk. And I somehow got through ahead of the crowd. And I said, I could not stop laughing. You were great. You're going to be a star. And that show is going to run forever. And I was right.
Now, without a doubt, you all think I paid a fortune to have her come here and tell that story, knowing how it would win your hearts. I thought you were going to tell something risque and something
I won't tell those.
Sexy.
I won't tell those.
Oh, okay, I will.
I'm saving those for the books.
When is that coming out? Okay. Well, my book is biblically clean. Nothing.
How did you do that?
Nothing. I crossed out a lot.
Sorry to interrupt this, but let me ask you all a question, because there's a wonderful sequence in the Gunsmoke episode where you're coming on to Jackie to get information from her because her husband, John Saxon, has buried gold. You're tracking John Saxon.
Yep.
She and her children moved the tree or cut down the tree where the gold was buried, and nobody can find it, but you think that she may know where it is. She was really spurning you at the time. She turned her back to you, and it pissed you off. Don't you remember?
I liked her back a lot, but I want more.
I always played nice girl.
Well, once I put him in the pokey, you won't have a husband.
That's thinking ahead.
Jackie, thank you for joining us. This was good. A big hand for Jacqueline Scott. I'll get you first.
I love you then, I love you now.
Love you too, darling.
I love that lady. She can do no wrong, and Quinn Martin must have loved her too, because Quinn Martin put Jackie Scott in the pilot of most of his shows. She was so strong, and was Don Siegel's good luck charm too in several films too. Just so terrific. I watched an episode the other night of The Fugitive, and I know you probably did A Fugitive too. She played David Jansen's sister in that series.
Oh, really? I did about 4, 5, or 6 of them.
You couldn't catch him in any of those episodes?
I thought his acting was the worst.
Really?
Yeah.
He had that twitch going.
Well, I mean, that's it. You never saw a guy who was accused of crime, and he had all those twitches going. And I never saw anyone work to expose himself as badly as he did. He was a lovely guy and lovely to be around, except when he got a little close to being accused.
There would have been no show if he hadn't had all those twitches and they won't get away.
I was doing 5 or 6 guest stars. What do you mean there been no? I would have had the show.
You should have caught him. I watched one the other day where not Jackie wasn't in it, but here's a great question for people. Lieutenant Gerard had a son. Who played his son in The Fugitive? Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell is the...
Kurt Russell, really?
Yeah, pretty amazing.
There was one where he was, what the hell's his name? Richard
Anderson?
Anderson, yeah. Where I was hired to be his guard or something. And I was supposedly an ex-football player. And I had killed somebody along the way. And what's his name, the star?
David Jansen.
Jansen.
With the twitch.
With the twitch, yeah. He was twitching his way through the show. And then I begin having flashbacks. I go gaga. And I begin re-envisioning running with the ball and catching the ball. And I was in football uniform and everything, running down the Rams field.
This is like an LSD trip.
Yeah. But I didn't have any LSD. That was exhausting.
It sounds like it. And, David Jansen said it was exhausting for him, too, to be running all the time in The Fugitive. He had a bad knee. And he said, please catch me. Please let Gerard catch me. So they caught him and the show was over. But before you go...
I like the movie a lot.
Oh, the movie was terrific,
yeah,
too.
Movie
Tommy Lee Jones, too.
Yeah.
Gerard.
Really did a good job.
With John Wayne, let's get back to Duke for just a minute, because I know that...
There was another time, I'll tell you, I'll interrupt to tell you about Duke. I was going along with Jimmy Kahn, and we bump into Duke sitting there. And I, being a big liberal, stayed away from talking anything about liberal to John Wayne. But Jimmy Kahn said, so what happened with you and the Patton movie? Duke began talking about it, and he got so angry because they wouldn't do Patton the way he wanted it to be done, so that eventually they got George C. Scott to do it. Jimmy kept thrusting him these questions, which just provoked him all the more, And he just kept getting in, and he had his hat in his hand, and he began talking about the guys involved in the movie, and he got so angry, he kept whipping his leg with his hat, damn, son of a bitch. I was amazed he had a hat left. But Jimmy just kept.
Well, to get on Duke's side, all you had to do was talk about films, because he loved movies. He was a real film buff. He loved making movies more than, talking politics. He says, all anybody ever wants to do is talk about politics or my cancer. And he says, I just want to talk about movies. So,
he was good.
that was a real surprise for Ed when Jackie Scott shouted from the audience and came up to see him. And I was kind of thrown off my rhythm there a little bit.
Yeah, surprise for the camera team, surprise for the sound team and lighting, everything, but we adapted. That's working live.
You could tell she loved him and he respected her, and we were very lucky to have them both together.
Yeah.
And Jackie's interviews that we'll share on our podcast later, talking about working on Gunsmoke and Have Gun Will Travel and some of the other shows. She was Jimmy Stewart's wife in Fire Creek. Mm-hmm. That's coming later, but we're going to talk with Ed now from 1977 when I first met him, and I learned later had been sort of a ornery guy. He wasn't happy with his career, and he was playing bad guys all the time, and it changed his life when he got Lou Grant on Mary Tyler Moore. Mm-hmm. But he was so forthcoming and so kind and generous to this nobody in Orlando who's doing a little talk show called Stardom, where I was able to meet a lot of people, and it gave me the confidence to head out to California and say, here I am, and everybody says, who gives a shit? But people were nice to me, and it all worked out.
Yeah, and it's pretty fun to hear young Rob talking up here. Sometimes when we do these intros for A Word on Westerns, my dad says, hey, take a breath, speak a little deeper. You'll thank me later.
And are you thanking me now?
Every single time I listen to one of these.
Well, I hope all of you are enjoying this out there. So let's get into Ed from years and decades ago. And me, I'll be talking not quite like this, but I'll be...
About right here.
Yeah, well, the questions are okay. I'm a little excited, but let's start.
Who wouldn't be? It's Ed Asner. Let's run it.
Let's
Roll
go.
the clip.
You've seen me sell Ajax every night.
Well, you've been selling Lou Grant and picking up a few Emmys for the past few years, and you're going to continue playing Lou Grant in an hour non-comedy show.
No, there'll be comedy in it. I just realized the other day that since we are averse to indulging in cops and robbers, since it's a journalistic show, I realized that where we can instill and install comedy, that this can serve as our supplanter of violence and or action. And I think it's a good supplant.
Program called Hennessy that used to deal in drama, never used a laugh track, but yet had a lot of human comedy in it. Is that the sort of feel you'll be looking for?
Well, we certainly won't have a laugh track. And I hope we have the integrity of Hennessy, which was a fine show.
Do you have a lot of say-so on the scripts that have been coming through?
Little me? No, because we have such phenomenal producer-writers. Alan Burns and Jim Brooks, who created Mary Tyler Moore, are our executive producers, along with Gene Reynolds, who came over from MASH. And we have a phenomenal lineup, coupled with our executive story editor, who is Leon Tkachin, who did some of the most instrumental work on The Senator.
Hal Holbrook's great series. Yeah. Had you done any work with Reynolds before?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No. The man has exhaustively researched the format of our show, spent months and months at the LA Times, the Oakland Tribune, sometime at the LA Examiner, and is on his third course at UCLA. I understand that he spent 2 tours of duty in Korea just as backgrounding himself for MASH.
Today we're talking with a man who has appeared with Elvis Presley. A couple of films, he's probably not noted for that, but in a 1969 movie, co-starred with Elvis Presley and Mary Tyler Moore.
We were both in the movie, but we didn't work with each other, so I never saw her.
When did you meet her then?
Not until I went up for my second reading for the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Your second reading, they didn't like you the first time?
Oh, that was just with them. The second reading was to get me together with Mary.
So you had done so much drama before. Was it difficult to play comedy?
I had put it at the back of my garage, and under the administrations of Alan Burns and Jim Brooks, Jay Sandrich, our primary director, and a phenomenal cast I worked with, over the years, I revivified my former expertise. See, I had done a lot of comedy on the stage. I had stayed away from it in film, and I had never been secure with it. So in my initial 9 years in California, I didn't seek it out. It didn't pay that much money to be a guest on a half-hour comedy show. And we were in the hopes of scoring big hit in drama. So something happened in those 9 years whereby it was easy for me to acquire the security in comedy that I hadn't had before.
There was a lot of speculation when Mary Tyler Moore was going off the air that she was going to marry Lou Grant in the final episode.
We just thought we'd fool around.
But if your character, Lou Grant, hadn't been continued in your new program, do you think the possibility could have really happened and you and Mary could have gotten together?
I had thought that might have been the case, but Alan Burns said the other day, and it's a very good point, after presenting this woman for 7 years as being a single woman, enjoying life, not being ashamed at being single, what a strange way to negate those 7 years of presenting herself as a wonderful human being without having to be married. And what a silly way to bring them together at the end. I lusted for her, I must say, and wanted her, but
Off camera or as your Lou Grant?
both. I must say that I think it's a very good rationale and means a lot.
In the 60s, there were a couple of traveling heroes on television, Todd and Buzz. They were traveling literate heroes looking for adventure in a series that did not have a lot of crime, a lot of car chases and shootouts. It had a lot of human emotion, a lot of drama. And Ed Asner appeared in several fine episodes from that
5 or 6
series. One of my favorite episodes, as a matter of fact, was called The Mud Nest, filmed in Maryland. It had Lon Chaney Jr. and Betty Field reunited from Of Mice and Men. George Maharis was in that town, and there was a resemblance. He thought that they were probably part of his family. He was an orphan in the series. What a great show that was.
I flew in with Lon. We filmed it in Baltimore. He and Betty had appeared in Of Mice and Men together originally. And he brought in the Levi's he wore in the show, and he called her on the phone, and he was so eager to put on his Levi's, which he wore in the show, and to work with her in the show. And they never got together. Unfortunately, they were in different scenes. They had no contact with each other, and she was busy running around doing something or other. They never saw each other. And he was a lovely man. And I was very unhappy at the outcome of this reunion.
Yes. You worked with George Maharis in a feature film also.
Right.
He's a real good actor, but I recall during the making of the series Route 66, he was always the rebellion, always demanding better scripts. Was that tension noticeable on the set?
Oh, yeah. I did about 5 or 6 of them, as I said, I can't remember. And it was always amazing to me to get a call to do a Route 66, because I thought after the last one, they could not possibly have continued. But I'd go there and I'd find that the situation was worse than ever. The scripts were later than ever. And it was a phenomenal operation to bring off a quality show as they did, with the phenomenal distances and logistics that were required. Phenomenal that it was as good as it was.
On the road like that, yet Sterling Silliphant was a story consultant, made it a wonderful program. Route 66 was not only a class show, it was a very popular show. Another program that had those same qualities was Quinn Martin's The Fugitive with David Janssen and Ed Asner. The busy character actor appeared in several of those as well. The Quinn Martin production staff, he tries to go first class all the time.
There's always a phenomenon. Most of his shows have had a high standard of quality. Untouchables, FBI, a number of others. But they've always had a special mark of distinction to them.
Now, what do you remember about working on The Fugitive? David Janssen has so much charisma that seemed to carry that haunted, wanted man effect across into the TV audience, so that they really cared about Dr. Richard Kimball.
That's an enormously popular show. And the thing about David Janssen, I must say, is that he's phenomenally humorous and charming off camera. The wonderful sense of humor, which, of course, that show never showed, due to the doom and gloom that it operated out of. And concerning my work on it, that was my great period. I rarely, if ever, on the 3 or 4 shows I did on Fugitive, have anything to exult in the characters I portrayed. One was a crippled ex-football player, as I recall. I had gone to school with Richard Anderson. Janssen was chauffeuring him around. He had a temporary gig chauffeuring him. And I was out to bump him off because of my resentment that he had become successful, I had become crippled.
Well, those programs like that where you were doing characterizations that were 1 or 2 dimensional rather than a lot of depth, did you ever get so disgusted that you wanted to try and do something else?
No, as long as I was making money, that phase didn't bother me. I certainly wasn't going to turn my back on it. But I must say that there was no joy in acting for me there. I'd concentrate on my garden, my hillside garden.
Or the joy in acting seems to be there now.
You bet your biffy it is.
He never did too many Westerns, but he did make one with James Garner called The Skin Game. You may have remembered him bouncing around on the horse.
Well put.
As a slave trader.
Yeah.
The title of that film, Skin Game, while it was a great comedy, the title is misleading.
I think a lot of people who didn't go to the trouble of looking below the title thought it was a porno flick.
And it was a marvelous film, and I'm very proud of having been in it. It had 30, 40 of the best character actors in Hollywood in it, and the performances by Susan Clark, by James Garner, and above all, Louis Gossett.
Fabulous.
Now of recent fame in Roots and The Deep, were marvelous. It was a marvelous picture, and the only place I talked to people who saw it was on airplanes. So I think it was distributed abominably.
It's a shame. They tried to make a pilot from it, too, because the concept was so good.
Right.
The pilot didn't quite come off.
I didn't see it, so I don't remember.
But it's Lou Grant that has made you really a household name.
Right.
Does the sudden stardom that took place with you, the celebrity, has that changed your home life, your personal life very much?
Sure. I mean, the demands on my time are enormous and ever increasing. I have to make more decisions as to yes here, no there. I'm glad I said to yes here.
So am I.
Yeah, thank you. But it's made a big boy out of me. Before, I was so delighted to be wanted, to be invited, that I couldn't say no to any of them. And I would say that I've grown up a little and know that I can only have so much time with my family, and I'm able to say no now. And I think they enjoy the fact they see more of me perhaps now than they did before.
A television series is a very grueling, time-consuming affair with an hour-long program bearing your name now.
My pseudonym.
Your pseudonym. Isn't that going to take a lot more of your time?
I'm very worried about that. And I can only hope that the quality of time away from it that I give to my family is of even a higher nature than what I gave before, to maintain that connection with them.
I'll tell you something about Ed. When I was invited to join him and go on location for Lou Grant as they were shooting it, they used to have a read-through at lunch for the next episode. The script would be passed around, and he knew I had no job yet, and he would invite me on those days because they served lunch as they were reading it. It would be a lunch break, and the cast would be there in a big table, and they gave me a script, and I would read whatever small part might be there, just to include me in it. Yeah. And it turned out to be a really kind thing to do. And I met Robert Walden, who later I had host a 10-hour tribute to Roger Corman called Outlaws of the Movies. And Robert Walden, what a fantastic actor he is. Too bad he didn't do Westerns, or he would be a guest on our show. But luckily, Ed did. And I want to thank him again for watching out for this new kid from...
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. You don't hear that every day, that degree of nurturing new talent, really.
I think it's up to us to do that.
Yeah.
And people do that. Eastwood does that, brings people up from inside and gives them a chance. And a lot of people do, and it's something that more people should, and I think I'm doing that with you, and I hope you don't resent me for that.
I appreciate it every day.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the people that are listening to this podcast and watching our YouTube series also. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Happy trails.
Happy trails. So you hadn't heard that story?
About walking around
down the
lot?
Western
No.
Street or having lunch as we're reading the scripts?
No.
I got plenty of these stories.
I mean, that's pretty incredible.
It is. I'm a lucky guy.
You are a lucky guy.
If you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to follow our show and share these interviews with your friends. You can also find A Word on Westerns on Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you, and see you next week on A Word on Westerns. Westerns is produced and hosted by Rob and RJ Word, and produced by Caroline Parker Stark. Edited by Alex Lockett and Bohr and Ebor Dro. Location audio is provided by Richard Reagan. Sound design by Alex Lockett. A Word on Westerns theme song was composed by Karel Pasoda, with additional arrangements by Shipwreck Music and R.J. Word.